So I'm doing a little experiment here. I am outdoors, so the quality may be a little different, but it's a beautiful day. And one of the things that I love, you might hear some people laughing in the background, is my ability to sort of be amongst people in my workday. As a clinician, as a entrepreneur, sometimes, you're just so focused on the work. And when you'd be in the hospital, I remember when I worked in New York City at the Roosevelt division of St. Luke's Roosevelt, which now I believe is part of the Mount Sinai collective. But at the time, it was down there at 59th in Amsterdam, 60th in Amsterdam or so. And I'd be on those in the fall. It would be dark when we get in. Wasn't quite the sun coming up totally yet, and then by the time we'd leave at like 4:30, it would start getting dark, and there'd be these periods of time. So when I moved down south, I take advantage of being part of in the sun, sitting out here by the pool, by the gazebo, by the cabanas, and just enjoying myself. And I hope that you have been able sometime this summer, when I'm recording this in the Northern Hemisphere, maybe it's your winter going into your getting out of your winter, going into your spring, as we're going to be going into our fall. And in this time, in this last little bits of this season, I hope you are appreciating it, appreciating the outdoors. Sometimes we get so comfortable with the conditioning that we have and the standardization of temperatures in our homes. And it's nice sometimes to just remember what season you're in, and if you can create a career you crave and a life you love, such as what I've created here with me, with the Owning Her Health podcast, with some of my joint ventures to expand the way I'm doing my healings now socially. I 100% encourage you to do that. So today's episode of Owning Her Health here, I had a nice goddess wisdom chat with a rest coach. What on earth is a rest coach? Anastasiya is a rest coach that she's kind of a rest coach and business strategist. She does it really interestingly because she understands, such as that I do, in creating the curvy hustle economy, is that if you don't support the person, the woman behind the business, the brand, the program, the methodology, then you're not going to be in business very long. You're not going to see the success that you can achieve. And what she usually covers is more than just the business strategies in terms of how do I make myself much more efficient, productive, and things that she did in corporate America with people. But she literally allows you to have more time in your day so that you can recharge. And she's then connected with people like me that if there was a need for literally helping your vitality, she could get you that connection. But what she realized, thankfully so, in her executive leadership, is that she would work with people whose, life and business, the mentality in corporate where she came from is that life and businesses are not supposed to be balanced, that they're mixed up, and that the roots of your existence and truth needs to be, almost disqualified in the experience of when you're working. And she realized that when she became a mom and when she was not taking accountability for her own rest, how her own nervous system was affected, and that impacted her communication skills and the effect in the productivity that she had in her career. And so she's just transferred this over now to working with clients. I recently read on one of her posts that she was working with a local soap maker and a mom of two who came in asking for her support in getting more time for just herself while being the main care provider. And that's sometimes what we see so many women entrepreneurs in a bind with. You go and create this career you crave in a life you love in your mind, going into entrepreneurship, but then nobody really teaches you life skills management and that home time and that home management. And that's a business in itself. So let's dive in here to Anastasiya Rutus and her take on You Deserve Rest.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. We'll walk the goddess path less traveled together to respectfully debate, supportively co-create, and wildly celebrate the unique passion, gratitude, and impact only a connection with women in wise counsel can provide. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
All right, everyone, we have a show for you. This is Dr. Lisa here. We are talking right now about rest. And that is a concept that is so much bigger than what many of you guys probably listening to this might understand. I know many of us think of it sort of in a polar kind of like I'm either doing something or I'm resting. But my guest today, Anastasiya Rutus, did I do it right? Rutus, is a rest coach. Okay, so that's what we're going to call her. But really, she's an energy worker. Because everything is energy. Everything is really about. We all have power. We all have a button on. Every one of our cells are working. But how are we using that while we're on or off per se, while we're doing certain things? So we're going to talk about that because so much of being able to, let's say, own your health, own your wealth, own the well-being of your family, own your financial stability, all the realms of beingness, even in your spiritual development. It's exhausting. I can tell you, I've been on the path. It is exhausting when we don't have those periods of using our energy in a different way, I will say, in having that diversity in the way we're using our energy, which is constantly being generated into us until the day we die, until we take that final breath in this body. We will get in a place of not only depletion, but sometimes as a clinician, I would sometimes tell people it's kind of like a constipation, an energetic constipation, which is like, it's not like you don't have poop in you. You have a lot of poop in you, and you can't get it moving. So sometimes I think that we have to sometimes think of our energy in that way. And one of those ways is kind of sometimes being coached through. So thank you so much for being here. Tell us in a couple minutes, I'd like to kind of turn it over to you. Who are you? Like, how did you get to a rest coach? Like, how did you become a rest coach? What was your story, Anastasiya?
Oh my God, rest poop, energy poop. It's gonna make
I make a connection. I was a pelvic health therapist, women's health therapist, and also worked in pediatrics. At some point, we're gonna talk.
It is so good. It's just I was like, this is so true. We get so stuck in our bodies and so stuck in our no, that's not true. We get stuck in our bodies because we get stuck on our to-do list. Anyways, thank you for having me. My name is Anastasiya Rutus, and as Dr. Lisa here said, I'm a rest coach who is trying to understand whether rest is the right word, but rest is what I'm on a mission to tell you about, because rest is a good thing. And how I got here is by really having a child, because my child, who is now, 2023, so she's 4, and when she was born, I stopped being a human being and I became this magical person who everyone adored because I made a baby. I became a mom, and I was the bread and butter for this child to survive. And at some point, after like the first haze of, okay, I figured out how to keep her alive enough, I was like, wait, when do I get to be me again? To me, that has never been a challenge up until the last 4 years, because I've always knew that I deserve all the things that I want in my life. And whether it's travel, whether it's downtime, when I was choosing a partner, it was like, do you understand that I get to have me time and you get to have your me time? Because I've seen so many relationships where the whole like, we just have to be together all the time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just too tired from being with you all the time. Like, I love you and all,
right,
but
because they're also, right, they also have their own energy, or they have their own stuff they're doing, and yeah.
And so, but when I had my child, and the child, like, you can't explain to a newborn anything, right? Like, all they want is to be with you. And that was like my first wake up call in the last 4 years, which is like, oh wait, things are different. You know how they say having children changes your life? Yes, it totally does, all sorts of levels, whether it's energy, the body composition, even the hormonal changes, right? Like all the things we go through as women, as female, well, as people who can make babies inside our bodies, have to
it's getting so complicated now,
right? It's like we have to complete creating those freaking humans out of ourselves, and then we're like, well, you're a mom. I'm like, yeah, but I was a human before. I was a human way longer than I was a mom. And to me, that was like, okay, what do I need to make time for myself, whether it be 1 minute sometimes or 1 hour? In my first year of having a baby, I went on something that other moms looked at me and were like, can you do that? I went on a solo trip. My baby was not weaned. I was still breastfeeding. I was pumping, and and it was during the first year of COVID. I was like, I just need to be away from all these people who are in my 1 bedroom. And I went away for 2 nights, Lisa. I remembered my brain started working. I was able to just sit down and have dinner without having to rush, because it's like everyone just wants me, or eating cold dinner because like I don't have time and have to attend to everyone at my table. And I just sat and stared at a window. I had no agenda, and I came back and I was like, oh my God, I have thoughts. I have ideas. I have things that I want to be doing in this life. And other moms were like, wait, you can leave your baby and they survive? I'm like, yeah.
Right.
Yes, you can, but it requires a system. Right. It requires confidence. It requires you feeling that you deserve that you deserve to ask for that. Because the reality is we live in a society where we are told that rest is something that has to be done when you've accomplished all the other things.
Yeah, it's like a bonus you get.
It is a bonus, it's a luxury, and it's something you do when you retire, right? And
if you make it that long.
Well, to me, it's like, but did you even get a notice that says you will actually get to that 65?
Right.
And you will have the energy to use that time and use all of that money then to do the things.
It's like the ultimate sale, as you're describing your experience, and thank you so much for sharing that, because there's so many people that hide it. This is a conversation women will maybe come on these shows and things like that to talk, but I even think of some of the men that they don't even have those outlets really to be expressing it, and then they're becoming kind of emotionally distant or angry or whatever with the added responsibilities as the new mother is taking on her role and trying to find herself. And there's so much complicated, like there's so many levels of this that I think we don't understand, is draining and tapping us and becoming these power leaks. I speak a lot to that, is sort of like finding those power leaks, because I agree. Women, we have enough power now. We have the connections, the education, it's the timeline, we've got the resources and things like that. Not every single woman has the same, let's say, access or equity or equality, but overall, as a group, we just don't know how to manage it optimally. We're sort of stuck in this sort of box of ways that was never made for us, because it is a patriarchal kind of male-based model, which works for their energy systems, because they get testosterone every 15 minutes pumped in. We don't get that beauty. But as you're speaking, I'm just kind of seeing the many boxes, and so I see the value of having somebody to coach you through those periods that may feel like I'm lazy or I'm being unproductive or something like that from the inside. Would you agree with that?
I love being lazy, Lisa. And I love being, I hate the word productivity these days. I try to stay away from it for so much because I'm not a machine and I'm not a conveyor belt. And to me, when people say, oh, I need to stay productive, I'm like, are you choosing to be busy for the sake of business, right? Because the society, kind of the patriarchy shows us that the only way to succeed is to be 24/7 on and keep on going without stopping, right? Or are you really intentionally saying, this is the focus, this is how it's going to take me towards whatever it is that I want to get to, right? Whether it's be finding me time, because clients come to me even, Lisa, for business strategy, not just energy work is and confidence work is the basis of it. But I also work with clients who have teams and who have going businesses, because it is part of a business strategy that we don't include it in, that we don't think about,
right.
Because we as entrepreneurs, because most of your audience is
right.
women
right.
who are
Thinking
trying to either get to more
thought
wealth,
leaders,
right?
Yep.
Right, exactly. It's we are so told that, hey, there is this guy example, they've been running, you have to run just as well. And the culture is just not primed for us to pause and assess. And all we're seeing is that next goalpost milestone thing that we keep continuously running without even seeing that, hey, we've already reached so much and we've passed so many marathon, trackers and things in our lives, that I have people think about, okay, how is your business can thrive with you really being energetically in it, right? Because imagine when you're sick, right? And you show up, do you even want to show up? Do you want your guest on a podcast to show up and be like, Lisa, I was so sick, and I'm like, but we had this appointment and I just didn't feel like.
Right, because they didn't want to reschedule or whatever, because they're
right,
kind
because
of stuck into that.
I'll put you at a disposition. I'm like, you're putting everyone at disposition by showing up sick, right? And same happens when we as women and we as females don't listen to our cycles, right? For so many of us, our cycles are messed up. Yes, because of all the stress, because of all the lack of rest, but when we don't listen to our cycles and we try to push through that, when we try to push through our 28-day cycle or whatever it is for different women, right? But the moon cycle is
right, in general, 28 to 32 days or so. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. We find ourselves being more exhausted on certain days because there is a reason for that. The way I approach rest and the way I want your listeners to think about rest is it is a necessity. It's almost like water and food that we need every day. It's not I'll go on vacation one week of a year, and it will replenish my whole thing.
How insane is that? It would be like fasting for 360 days and getting to eat for 5 days of the year.
And getting to stuff yourself with it, right?
Right.
But the reality of fasting and of starving is that when you haven't been eating for so long, your body can't even digest. Your body will actually start vomiting all the things.
Yeah.
And so when we only give ourselves that oh my God, there is this vacation and it's happening and it's once a year and I've put all my money, all of my expectations, what then becomes of that vacation? What do you think? It turns into a FOMO-filled exercise.
And then sometimes I see some people who are such high achievers and kind of so structured that the vacation becomes so structured. They can't even get, and it's I don't want to, my ex-in-laws, one of the in-laws, that's how they were. I was like, hey, I came here to be we'll see what happens by the day. And they were so bent out of shape because this is how they had, this is how But when we do that, we really, for me, I think we're not trusting the process.
No.
So I think a lot of people hearing this again, if they're sort of stuck in we're not saying those things aren't helpful. We're not saying that in times of crisis there's management but we can't keep managing our lives. We actually have to live it. So what are some practical, what if I was listening to this, I'm like, oh my God, I've got to work with this woman. I've got to find out, because like you said, we're bringing ourselves to our work. We're setting up these corporate cultures, right? Everyone's talking about DEI and the toxic big corporations, but we can have a business of 3 people and make it just as toxic if we're sort of showing up that way. We make our families toxic showing up that way. How do we make this practical? What would happen if I'm working with you? How could I work with you? What do you have set up?
So the way you work with me is I've created a framework. I call it You Deserve Rest, because it's really about what you need, right? Your body, your energy, but it's also about what are the stories you tell yourself that stop you from resting? Because so many of us have either thought oh my God, it is so risky for me to even pause because something would break, right? If we're holding a child and we're can I give it to my partner and my partner wouldn't drop it,
right.
Drop that baby. It's there is a risk of that, yes. But I'm also coming from a perspective of a risk manager. So I'm a rest coach, and I've spent over 13 years in corporate environments working as a risk manager. I've looked at processes, I've looked at controls, but what it comes down to from a life perspective is that every situation bears some risk. You sitting at home has a risk of your home, falling out, right? And something falling on your house and it's just breaking down. Same way with getting out. There is no way for us to avoid that risk. But when we keep it all in our heads, that's when it becomes this monstrous horror movie of I can't even give myself a moment to pause because I have to do all these things. I'm the only one who can be in charge. So when people come to me, we really dive into who are you? Who have you been before? Maybe if you don't remember who you are right now, right? And what are those risks and stories that keep you kind of stuck in the process? And then we go really into the specifics, because rest is about, do I have the confidence to ask for help? Do I have strong and flexible, the key word is flexible boundaries, because our fence that we create around ourselves is not meant to be this wall between Mexico and the US, right? It's meant to be this ever kind of moving, ever changing, and very fluid thing where we know that we deserve this space, but we know that, hey, I can allow to open it to some people, but I'm really strong about something else. And so practicing all of that, it's almost like building a habit, Lisa. And that's what we really do together, is we identify, okay, what can be filling you with joy? Because life is meant to be enjoyed, right? Life is not meant to be survived. And that's what I want everyone to think about, is am I enjoying if I die tomorrow? Because that's the reality. We can all die tomorrow, right? Whether we want to think about it. How will I want to be remembered? Did I achieve the joyful things that I wanted to achieve, or was I just running after the picket fence and the picket fence is there, but I haven't noticed it? And also, will my loved ones actually remember me being with them, or will they just see my back all the time, right? And me saying I'm busy and can we talk in 3 years, when I don't know, build this business or something. And so we work with habits, and we work with them in the tiniest, I call them experiments. I call them tiny experiments with rest, because every day is like this new chapter. It's a new page, right? And you get to try it and try it and try it. Everyone who has kids knows that. You can tell your kids something one day and then tomorrow they will totally forget it. And
right.
you have to repeat it to them, because they don't have that long-term memory yet developed. So they're also looking for proof for you to be consistent on certain messages. So it's the same way with us, and our nervous systems are out, like our kids who have been neglected for so long, that we just tell them like, hey, today I'm gonna try this, and tomorrow, if today didn't feel right, I'm gonna try something else, or I'm gonna try the same thing but in a different way. I last year did an experiment with myself. I love taking baths, and so for 30 days in August, because it's a wellness month and stuff like that, I challenged myself to take a bath every day. At least I get results by taking baths every day, right? That just sounds funny, but at the same time, it's like the same thing is when it becomes too much.
Right, monotonous and kind of routine.
I was like, okay, this is boring. Like, I don't want to fill another bathtub. Can I put my fingers in? But at the same time, it was a good reminder, like, hey, it's good to have a variety of things, and they're not just limited to manicures and spas and bathtubs and sleep, right? It's so much more and so much wider. So, but it really depends on a person. So when someone comes to me and wants to work with me, we can do that as like a one-on-one coaching, and we can create strategies and plans, because really it's about seeing the bigger picture, but also having very specific day-to-day, how it can look in my day, how it can look on my calendar, and how can I do that without feeling like I'm adding more chores to my list, because
Right.
this is
Well,
not
that's
really
the big thing, right? It's like, and that then works into the mindset work, and it's sometimes hard for people to understand that they want consulting, right? They want a solution maker and to get the system or whatever, but they don't realize they actually need the coaching sometimes, because their problem was always the coaching. They always knew kind of what to do, they just never did it. And then there's the other people who, you don't need the coaching, but you need the system. So they want you there, sort of telling them, keep reminding them, and whatever. Sometimes they say they want a coach, but then they don't, they almost get resistant because they actually have their way in their systems, but they don't have, they have, but it's not the right system for them, for the life they want, and this and this and that. So I love that you sort of, spoke to that full gamut, and that it's even named like you deserve rest, because some people are wearing it like a badge of honor.
Oh,
And
the
I see that
tiredness,
as,
the busyness.
yeah, being tired or being tough or not sleeping or not needing rest. And really, I just see that as you're lacking your feminine energy of receptivity. You're kind of, that to me seems like an energetic imbalance. Like it's a lie, because it's physiologically, not good for you.
And it's very interesting, because when I was in corporate, I would always see these people who are like not CEOs or founders and, owners of the company, would do things like not go on vacation. That's already been paid for by their time and their energy and their, knowledge. And I would ask them, I'm like, why not? Why are you burning time and your own health? They're like, oh, I can't leave because. And to be honest, Lisa, outside of hospitals, no one, and fire stations, right, like the emergency services, the frontline workers, no one is really saving lives. No one is,
right.
Oh God, if I don't complete this project,
right.
someone's gonna die.
Right.
No, the reality is, if you're gonna complete this project the way it's set up right now, you might gonna die. And what will happen is your firm will post a vacancy tomorrow, maybe in a day, when they recover from the, oh my God, how did that happen? And sure, we take care of the family, but you're gone by then.
Maybe they will do that, because some of it's just, what are we going to do with such and such things that they were dealing with here? Or because that's the reality.
Oh, we don't have the money for the new position, so let's just spread that.
Right, exactly. Let's give Janie or Bob, a new title. Sometimes they're not even getting the extra money. I have a former client right now that I was just speaking to, and she's kind of stuck in that bubble. We were just going to get together just for, for a happy hour. She can't even, she's like exhausted on every Friday, because that's what happened. The higher up got, whatever happened, and she ended up with, and at first her thought is, they're seeing me, and it seems like it's such a gift, and it's such a confidence booster. She gets in there, she's doing a good job, and now she's realizing, it's been 6 months, they haven't hired somebody. And I told her, I said, look, you know, you can either hire me to help you get into a new position or do something else where you really want to take action. Or I can tell you as a friend right now, they're abusing you because you showed up exactly how they thought you were going to show up, by the way, and you're okay with it. You need to either go talk to them about this or whatever. And then it becomes the fear, well, I might get fired. You might if they're really jerks, but then should you get out of there anyway?
Right. That is the risk. But when we don't, when we keep that risk in our head, when we keep that like, oh my God, this is the worst case scenario, one of the things I have my clients do is really dump it out on paper and be like, okay, now let's see what are the ways it can go wrong. Right. What is really the chance of that going that far, right? Like, can they fire her? Yes. Is that the worst that can happen? I wouldn't say so because she'll.
And the fact that they were just replacing like, do they really want to have 2 slots now? You know,
and that's the thing is that there is so much data. There is trillions of dollars lost, Lisa, every year globally for companies because their employees are tired, stressed, exhausted, burned out, and God forbid, dead. Right? The medical costs that come with it, the hours that they're not working, the hours that they have to redo their own work because the mistakes are happening because they're exhausted and tired and all the things. Right. And at the same time, all we do is we invest in like the checkbox exercises. Well, we have a wellness program. I'm like, is anyone using that wellness program? Right. Is your management showing you an example of really unplugging, or is it that like portrayal kind of a D&I type thing where, oh my God, we have diversity, and then on July 1st.
And then you have that like token kind of thing, or you have that workshop that nobody can implement.
And then they're like, and where is the CFO, right? It's like, okay, so do you respect me for my position and my kind of thought, or do you just keep me here for a check mark, right? But when we don't speak up, when we don't say that like your client or your friend, right? When we just keep quiet thinking, oh, they will notice. No, I'll be honest with everyone listening to this. Everyone has their own shit. Right. Everyone is busy figuring out their own shit. They're busy in their own hamster wheels, running after their own or someone else's goals. And until you bring it up into their face with potentially, and this is how I'm going to enforce this if you're not going to decide in my favor, and being okay with like leading with that, right? Like that's that boundary. It's like, okay, I can talk to them, and if they say that they will fire me, this is what I'm going to tell them, or this is how my next steps will take me. This is like the risk management approach that I take with my clients. Is like, we take the worst case scenario and then we plan for it. Because when you plan it, it just becomes that next project. You're like, okay, I know that if they do A, we go into this direction. And if they do B, we go into this direction. And we deserve that. We deserve that confidence. We deserve to be helped. And one of the things that people get with me is that they not just get the coaching, because yes, the coaching is a huge part of it. But really for many, like you said, we all know we need it. We all know we like wanted some way, some wanted more, some wanted less in different ways. But what we need is we need the support and accountability to keep us going through the hard work.
Right, that momentum.
Because what I've seen with entrepreneurs, and you tell me if you see differently, but people leave corporate jobs, for example, to be like, oh, I'm going to go into entrepreneurship because I'm going to get more freedom. And they don't give that themselves. They become their own worst bosses. They take that freedom away completely because there is so much more they have to be doing, and they can't seem to stop because the choices that they're making are just, and the picture that they're seeing is not as clear to them that, hey, it can be different. You can make money while actually taking care of yourself. Like they don't even understand
that's a big concept that, I mean, that was my whole private practice, honestly, my clinical practice. I was using yoga, bringing that into pain management, pain coaching. I stopped treating fairly early when I realized a lot of, like, again, a lot of behavioral habits had to change. The core drivers had to change. And I figured, hey, they can get this whatever anywhere, I can give them this aspect, because it is so much in the head of like, there was that aspect of like they couldn't get off the hamster wheel, even when they were sick. They were like, had to like, do more. And I was trying to explain to them, your tissues need to rest. This is how we may build more muscle. We need this period of revitalization or whatever. But then there was the other side too, who gets so depleted, they get stuck in like a depression, literally depressed of they're not healing as quickly. They're not regaining their networks as quickly. This can apply to outside of our personal body, because we are a reflection of our outside in, but we're also reflecting out, and we get in our outside what we reflect out. So I really appreciate kind of what you're saying. In the last couple of minutes, I kind of want to take this. I usually take people through. You've gained such wisdom, and I want people listening, like, you have so much wisdom in you through your life experience. It's not just your degrees and all of these other things. It really is, how do those things, why did I even take those degrees from my life experience? Where am I sort of blending this into my own sort of tonic, my own medicine? If you were to talk to the you of 10 years ago, if you were like, 10 years ago, Anastasiya, what you watching her, what would you say to her that could have been so valuable? You think that if there would have been that mentor or that wise woman in your circle, or just heard those words that now, if she were to just whisper in your ear right now, that girl 10 years ago, that woman 10 years ago, what would you say? What would be a couple sentences or just a word or something you'd tell her?
I would say stay on the path, because even then I knew what was important to me. I already knew, I already discovered that, hey, I need that space to be me. I was in prior relationships when either partners would want to be with me completely nonstop, and I'll be like, can we not do this weekend thing? And they will get offended, and they would get all sorts of things. And then they would get almost into emotional abuse of telling me what I can and cannot do, and where I can and cannot go. And I wasn't, because I was younger, I was less whatever, but I was allowing them some of that. I was trying to bend into other places and to fit others more than fit myself. And at some point, myself just showed up and was like, what the fuck are you doing? This is not you. This doesn't feel good. So get the hell out. Right. And I've had my relative, I had to stay really strong with the pressure, even from my loved ones and family. So knowing, almost when you set a boundary, that's the problem, is that when you set a boundary, so many people try to attack it all the time because they feel like they deserve it, not you. And at that point, I was really in a moment of time where I knew that, hey, this is my bubble, and just keep on going the way it is, and maybe be bolder, but really stay on the path of being true to yourself. That's what I would say. Because 10 years ago, it was like a life-changing moment. I met my current husband to be, and we were kind of talking about potentially me moving from Ukraine, which I'm from, to the US. And so this is when I had to exercise that boundary, because he was like, well, I'm going to move and you're going to come with me and we're going to try living together. I was like, so you want me to uproot my life and try?
Right.
No. You're here, because he was in Ukraine, we met in Ukraine. And I was like, you're here, I'm moving in tomorrow. We're trying it for 3 months, until your whatever contract ends. Because I'm not moving across oceans,
right.
Dropping my job
right.
To see if your household habits are gonna drive me nuts. So that then I have to go back. I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah, the wisdom of that it is. It's important, especially when we're younger and we're still finding ourselves. It's so easy for us to chameleon into, become our spaces. And some of it we need to. Some of it we do need to try on different robes.
Yes.
But we need to sort of have some, and I think that's, that's a whole other show in itself. It's like, are we actually getting through the adolescence where we have an idea of our own style? Because we can get so lost in other people's for decades. I mean, and then it shows up in our bodies, our minds, our businesses, our jobs, our relationships, and all of that. So let me flip that and say, if you're truly successful, you have so many people who go through You Deserve Rest program, and they're working with you, and they're bringing it. Even these businesses are being designed with this idea and this model of bringing that person now that understands that into a bigger environment of organization. What is that woman telling you right now? What could she be telling you right now that okay, I'm on the right path?
Oh, I got chills. I got like I got the goosebumps. But I was just thinking that that's the place where she tells me again, stay on the path and be true to yourself and keep on really digging in to find that clarity, because that clarity is what's going to bring more people into what I call this elite. Elite. Thank you. My English is not my first language, but into the elite, very tiny bubble of people who actually rest every day. And rest, in my mind, and in what I want everyone who's listening to the show is think about, rest is really sips of water that you do every day. Think about it this way, like, how can it be dispersed out throughout your day, whether it be like a stare out the window type thing, or dance it out for a moment, or whatever it is that feels good in that moment, to intentionally take a pause and make a choice to give yourself that moment. Because even if it's just 1 minute a day, it can accumulate into many, many, many incredible moments in your life that you would start looking forward to. And so this woman is telling me, you are on the right path, and do not go back to corporate.
Do not go, no matter what, figure it out. I hear you.
Exactly.
That's an important thing, because it's so hard, especially when your business is speaking to the side of people that they don't necessarily want to deal with. Like, I can sympathize with that kind of idea of, like, when you're working. I'm not a light worker. I mean, I worked in yoga, and I did a lot of therapeutic interventions and bringing it up to mainstream medicine. And to me, that was enlightening them. A lot of that was the education of enlightening them. But really, what we do is dark work. In the throes of we're gonna, in order to get transformational change, some people are coaching inspiration, some people are coaching transformation, and I see you as that type of person, like myself. It's, in order to get change, there's going to be the destruction. Like, we're not the ones that are like, how do we keep up the system? We're actually saying, we're going to tear that MF down, and we're going to build. So it is, I appreciate that, kind of speaking from that,
And we have to start small, because trying to break down the big corporations is really stupid. I've seen it from the inside.
They're going to bury themselves.
Right, but it has to start at the level where people actually try to make a change, and then we become more of a critical mass. So I don't know if 10 years is going to get it enough of a critical mass, but it's definitely going to save more lives and make people more money, because when you're rested, you can get done stuff more effectively, more efficiently, with less mistakes. You show up with your full energy. Your riches are going to go richer simply by resting. And if you go to my website, if you sign up for my freebie, I have a freebie coming up right now. I have a challenge that's how can you find intentional moments of rest every day? Because people are like, I am too busy. I'm like, can you give me 60 seconds? In 24 hours, can you find 60 seconds for yourself? and then you can be proud, and you can tell me to be proud of yourself, right? But can you start with that? But really, it's like, how can we shift our mindset to think that rest is a necessity, we deserve it, and we deserve it every day, and it doesn't even have to cost us that vacation money, because there are things that we don't allow ourselves to do, or there are things we call guilty pleasures that I'm like, why is pleasure has to be guilty? Why does, like,
why are we putting the guilt at all on top of that?
Even if you like, well, if you hate yourself for eating something, don't eat. Like, you just acknowledge the fact that you're making a choice to consume whatever it is you're consuming in the amount of consuming you're doing, right? Whether we're binging on something or we're bagging a bag of chips, right? Like, is it the whole bag of chips that brings you joy, or is it one bag of one chip that's bringing you joy?
Or is it even the chips, right? Is it
or is it even the chips?
The control or the choice or the memory thing? I mean, I love everything that you're doing. I definitely see this. Now, you said the best way to get to you is your website, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And my website is very easy. It's rest, as in REST, .coach, COACH.
Beautiful.
You can find all ways to connect with me there. Social media, I'm kind of not everywhere, but I'm trying to be really consistent with how I want to
show up as the product of the product. I get it.
Well, right. It's like, if I'm exhausted, then how can I be a rest coach? And so social media does make me exhausted. And I want to say to every entrepreneur listening here, the truth is, if it makes you exhausted, you should not be doing it. If something makes you exhausted, you should not be doing it the way you're doing it right now. It's either need to be modified or taken off your plate completely.
Delegate, modify, exactly.
And the last thing I want to leave people with on this one is that even if you have to delegate, it doesn't always have to cost money or as much money as you think. I fired a personal chef several years ago. People were like, oh my God, that's expensive. I'm like, that is so much cheaper than the takeout that is too salty for me, the time I have to spend planning. Lisa, he plans, shops, cooks, cleans.
Like, know what you're getting, right? Because this is a conversation of wealth, which, again, we probably have to have another conversation here where we're talking about this, like the whole or bigger concept of wealth and how that is. Because what I heard out of all of this is, I take it to the aspect of the breath. When you learn how to breathe, and everybody's like, well, I know how to breathe. I'm breathing all the time. Most people don't. That was like one of the first things I would always work with people, is how to breathe. And when you learn how to breathe, there comes a moment where you're not inhaling or exhaling. It's the pause, like you said. And that actually gets to be longer and longer. There's been times in meditation where I'm sat and I'm like, I better inhale, but you're comfortable there. There's a big difference. And so, definitely download her stuff. Definitely get everything on the website, because even if you just take the challenge, do you have 60 seconds? If anybody listening to this says, no, I don't, you desperately need to speak to several of us that have been on this show. Like, you are in a state of, you're no longer living. Like, you are no longer living. You are in a place of you are highly at risk of death at that point. Like, you need to speak to
premature death. Right? It's like,
sure, like you're no longer living. Like, I consider you being the Walking Dead. I mean, again, a whole different show. But definitely download stuff. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a rest coach and for taking that journey through your own life to then be contributing in this way, because I think that's, again, something that people don't really realize is so valuable in this world. So thank you for doing that. If anybody has any questions or whatever, it'll always be on the show notes. Like I said, on the listed show notes, when you see me publish it, I always have the direct link. Go there, you'll have the links. Make it as easy as you need to get your rest, utilize yourself, and hopefully that you take some of this and understand there's fitness in this. This is what I heard. There's fitness. You need to be fit in your resting. You need to be fit in all of these things. All right, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Owning Her Health.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.